Stop scrolling for just 15 seconds, because this is not a story about luck, talent, or overnight success. This is about a moment most people experience but rarely admit. The moment when you realize you're tired of just surviving and quietly decide that your life has to mean more than repeating the same days forever. And this is the story of Daniel Moore, an ordinary American man whose life looked fine from the outside but felt empty on the inside. Because at 32 he had what society calls stability. A steady job, a small apartment, bills paid on time, weekends that came and went. But every morning he woke up already tired, drove to work on autopilot, sat through hours that didn't challenge him, and came home with a strange heaviness he couldn't explain, telling himself that this was adulthood and that wanting more was unrealistic. Yet late at night, when the noise stopped and the room went quiet, he felt a fear he couldn't scroll away. The fear that this routine might be his entire life. And that fear grew stronger every time he compared himself to others who seemed to be moving forward while he felt stuck in place. Not because he lacked intelligence or ability, but because he had spent years choosing comfort over growth and safety over risk. Until one unexpected moment forced him to confront the truth when he attended his uncle's funeral and listened as people spoke about a man who wasn't rich or famous but was remembered with respect because he showed up, helped others, and lived with purpose. And on the drive home, Daniel realized something painful yet powerful. If his life ended today, there would be nothing wrong with it, but there would be nothing meaningful either. And that realization stayed with him, refusing to be ignored, leading him to ask a question he had avoided for years. If nothing changes, will I be okay with this life? And for the first time, the honest answer was no. So instead of making dramatic moves or quitting his job, Daniel started small, waking up earlier, cutting distractions, learning skills he had always claimed he didn't have time for, even when progress felt invisible and motivation disappeared. Because most days felt pointless and lonely, with no encouragement and no proof that his effort would ever pay off. And when he finally tried to build something of his own and it failed quietly without attention or reward, the old version of him almost quit. But this time he stayed, realizing that failure wasn't the enemy. Quitting was, and slowly discipline replaced motivation, consistency replaced excitement, and patience replaced frustration, even as friends questioned why he was doing too much, and suggested he relax and accept life as it was, not understanding that growth is lonely before it's respected and uncomfortable before it's rewarding. And over time, Daniel began to change, not suddenly or dramatically, but internally, as he stopped asking what if I fail and started asking what if I don't try, understanding that fear never disappears, but courage grows every time you act despite it. And although setbacks continued, financial stress, self-doubt, long nights of uncertainty, he learned that avoidance ruins more lives than failure ever could. And years later his life looked different, not perfect or easy, but intentional, built on self-respect, clarity, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you didn't abandon yourself when things got hard. And Daniel realized that success in America doesn't belong to the loudest, the fastest, or the luckiest, but to the one who keeps going when progress is slow, results are delayed, and no one is watching. And if you feel behind, invisible, or tired of pretending you're okay, this story is for you. Because you don't need permission to change your life, you don't need to have everything figured out, and you don't need to be fearless to move forward. You only need the courage to start and the discipline to continue. Because real success isn't about becoming famous or rich, it's about becoming free from regret, free from what if, and free from the life you almost accepted. And in the end, Daniel didn't win overnight, didn't go viral, and didn't impress the world, but he built a life he respected. And that is the kind of success that actually lasts. Because you don't change your life in one moment. You change it the day you stop running from the truth and choose to keep going. Because you don't change your life in one moment. You change it the day you stop running from the truth and choose to keep going. And once Ryan accepted that, something inside him shifted. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily, as he stopped waiting for motivation to save him and started building discipline to guide him. Understanding that most people don't fail because they lack talent or opportunity, but because they keep postponing the work that scares them. And there were still days when he felt tired, still nights when doubt whispered that he was too late or too average to succeed. But instead of listening to those thoughts, he learned to treat them as noise rather than instructions, showing up anyway, doing the work anyway, improving one small thing at a time. And slowly the identity he once questioned began to solidify, as he no longer saw himself as someone hoping for change but as someone creating it. And that mindset made setbacks easier to handle, because failure stopped feeling personal and started feeling educational, teaching him patience, resilience, and humility. And as months turned into years, Ryan noticed how many people around him stayed stuck not because life was unfair, but because they were afraid of being uncomfortable, afraid of looking inexperienced, afraid of starting something they couldn't immediately succeed at. And he realized that comfort is often more dangerous than failure because it keeps you safe while quietly stealing your potential. And while his progress still wasn't flashy or loud, it was real, built on habits instead of hype, effort instead of excuses, and consistency instead of intensity. And one day he caught himself doing something that once felt impossible, trusting himself, trusting that even if things didn't work out perfectly, he would figure it out, because he had already survived confusion, rejection, and uncertainty before, and that self-trust became his greatest asset, freeing him from constant comparison and the need for approval, allowing him to move at his own pace without shame. And when people eventually noticed his growth and asked what changed, he didn't talk about mindset hacks or secret formulas. He simply said he stopped lying to himself and started taking responsibility. And if you're listening to this feeling behind, overwhelmed, or unsure whether your effort matters, understand that the version of you who keeps going today is already stronger than the version who almost gave up yesterday, because real transformation doesn't announce itself. It happens quietly when you choose progress over comfort again and again. And even if no one claps, even if no one believes, even if results take longer than expected, staying consistent is never wasted. Because one day you'll look back and realize that the life you once wished for became possible not because everything went right, but because you refused to stop when things went wrong. And that is how ordinary people build extraordinary lives, not by changing everything at once, but by choosing to keep going when quitting feels easier. And as that realization settled deeper, Ryan began to move through life with a quieter confidence, no longer rushing to prove himself and no longer panicking when progress felt slow, because he finally understood that growth is supposed to feel uncomfortable before it feels rewarding. And there were still moments when old habits tried to pull him back, moments when distraction felt easier than discipline and comfort tempted him to pause. But this time he recognized those moments for what they were: tests, not signs. And instead of seeing them as reasons to stop, he used them as reminders of how far he had already come. And little by little his days started to look different, not because his circumstances magically changed, but because his choices did, as he became more intentional with his time, more honest with his goals, and more patient with his own learning curve. And he learned that consistency doesn't mean doing everything perfectly. It means returning to the path even after you step off it. And that lesson alone removed so much pressure, because he no longer felt like one bad day could erase months of effort. And as his skills improved and opportunities slowly followed, he stayed grounded, remembering how easy it is to lose yourself chasing outcomes instead of values. And he promised himself that no matter how far he went, he wouldn't forget the version of himself who felt lost, because that version taught him empathy, humility, and gratitude. And when setbacks still appeared, as they always do, he met them with curiosity instead of anger, asking what they were trying to teach rather than why they were happening to him. And this shift in perspective made him resilient in a way that success alone never could. And one evening, during a quiet moment that felt strangely familiar to those early nights of doubt, he realized something powerful. The fear that once controlled him was gone, not because life became certain, but because he had become capable of adapting, learning, and continuing no matter what came next. And that realization brought a sense of peace he had never known before, because for the first time he trusted himself more than his circumstances. And if you're listening to this right now wondering when things will finally click, remember that they already are in ways you can't yet see, because every day you choose honesty over excuses, effort over avoidance, and patience over panic. You are quietly becoming someone who can handle the life you say you want. And that is why the journey matters more than the timeline, why persistence matters more than speed, and why the decision to keep going, especially when no one is watching, is the decision that eventually changes everything. And as Ryan continued forward, he eventually realized that the most meaningful part of his journey was not the goals he reached, but the mindset he carried with him. Because somewhere along the way he stopped measuring his life by external milestones and started measuring it by internal alignment, by how honestly he lived, how consistently he showed up, and how willing he was to face discomfort without running away. And this shift brought a calm strength that no achievement alone could ever provide, because he no longer feared slow progress, no longer felt threatened by comparison, and no longer waited for perfect conditions to feel confident, understanding that confidence is built by surviving uncertainty, not avoiding it. And there were still days when life tested him, days when plans failed, energy dropped, and doubt tried to return. But those moments no longer carried the same power, because he had learned that setbacks are not signs of weakness but reminders that growth is still happening beneath the surface. And as time passed, he began to see clearly how many people live their entire lives negotiating with their potential, promising themselves they will start tomorrow, next month, or next year, never realizing that tomorrow quietly becomes never. And this awareness made him deeply grateful for the moment he chose honesty over comfort, because that single decision created a chain reaction of discipline, clarity, and self-trust that slowly reshaped everything. And when he looked back at the version of himself who once felt stuck, invisible, and afraid of wasting his life, he felt compassion rather than regret, knowing that confusion was part of the process and hesitation was simply fear asking to be understood, not obeyed. And he understood that no one truly feels ready before they begin, they become ready by beginning. And that truth alone separates those who change their lives from those who spend their lives waiting. And if you are listening to this right now, feeling behind, overwhelmed, or uncertain whether your effort matters, let this be the moment you understand that your journey is not broken, delayed, or failing. It is unfolding exactly as it should, shaping you with patience, resilience, and depth that shortcuts could never offer. And while the world often celebrates speed, visibility, and instant results, life rewards those who stay consistent when progress is quiet and recognition is absent. Because those are the moments when character is built and self-respect is earned. And one day, without warning, you will look back and realize that the long nights, the repeated attempts, the uncomfortable growth, and the discipline no one applauded were quietly preparing you for a life that finally feels right. And when that realization arrives, you won't wish you had gone faster. You'll be grateful that you didn't quit, because the greatest success is not found in becoming someone admired by others, but in becoming someone you respect, someone who didn't abandon themselves when things got hard. And as this story comes to an end, remember this simple truth. You don't change your life by waiting for a breakthrough. You change it by choosing persistence over comfort again and again, by continuing when quitting feels reasonable, and by trusting that every honest step forward, no matter how small, is building a future that will one day make sense, feel meaningful, and prove that staying consistent was the most powerful decision you ever made.